In a previous video, I shared 10 minutes of useless facts about Red Dead Redemption 2, and because it did so well, we're back again with another 10 minutes of useless facts. Before getting into the video, if you enjoy the content here and want to see a bit more from me, then there is a link in the description down below which will take you over to my second channel. My second channel isn't based around any type of game, it's actually more about me and my entrepreneurial journey. So if you are interested in making money online, then definitely go and head over to there. A link can be found in the description down below. Getting back into the video, the first thing that I do want to say before we actually get into the facts is spoiler alert. We will be talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 story, we'll talk about stranger missions, but also the main missions. I understand that we are now coming up to 4 years since this game has been released and most of you probably have played it. But just in case you haven't, there is your warning. But with all of that said and done, let's get into this. Arthur Morgan's first and last missions are both with Dutch Van der Linde and Micah Bell. It's somewhat poetic to see how Arthur Morgan's story started within Red Dead Redemption 2 and exactly how it ended. Arthur Morgan is the 6th protagonist to be killed in a Rockstar game, and out of the 27 members of the Van der Linde gang, only 7 members are alive at the end of both games. This is Charles Smith, Mr. Pearson, Jack Marston, Tilly Jackson, Mary Beth, Sadie Adler, and Reverend Swanson. Fates of Josiah Trelawney and Karen Jones are both unknown, but a letter to John from Tilly states that Karen drank herself to death. So this just leaves Josiah Trelawney as the only person who is unknown. Throughout Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2, we see Jack Marston at 4 different stages: 4, 12, 16, and 19. Midway through Red Dead Redemption 2, when a gang go on a bank heist in Saint Denis and Lenny is fatally shot, how each gang member reacts to it is very telling. Arthur stops to help him, Charles briefly stops to look at him before continuing on, Dutch, Bill, and Micah run by without a single glance, and Javier stops quickly to look before continuing. Arthur Morgan passes out 3 times due to tuberculosis. The first time during the mission, a fork in the road, the second time after bringing the mortally wounded Eagle Flies to a PT, and the third time during the side mission while having dinner with a widow. At the start of the mission of That's Murphy Country, Dutch and Arthur discusses the gang's situation in chess terms, and Dutch mentions that the game isn't over until he's made his move. This is exactly what happens in the final mission of the game, as Dutch resolves the game's only remaining conflict by shooting Micah. While John finishes Micah off immediately afterwards, it's still Dutch's move that effectively ends the game. If Arthur Morgan antagonizes any members of the gang while at the camp, either John Marston, Bill Williamson, Javier Escuela, Lenny Summers, or Charles Smith will punch him and throw him out of camp. Jack Marston meets Agent Milton and Ross when Arthur takes him fishing on a riverbank. Later in Red Dead Redemption, Jack takes revenge for John's death by killing Agent Ross while he is duck hunting on a riverbank. When Arthur Morgan first passed out and was guided to the clinic in Saint Denis for the first time, if after that mission you revisit the exact same clinic, you will unlock unique dialogue. The doctor will ask Arthur about his illness and offer another energy shot, but you can't actually have the shot because there is no option. In the final mission, American Venom, in Epilogue Part 2, you can see Black Rat going towards Micah Bell as you approach him in the cabin, symbolizing Micah as the rat of the Van der Linde gang. Out of all the challenges offered in-game, Herbalist is the only one that cannot be completed by Arthur Morgan, as challenges 9 require gathering certain plants only found in New Austin, which only John Marston can access. The only way that you can do this with Arthur is if you use glitches. It was originally intended that Arthur was able to travel over to New Austin, but this ended up being cut content. And we know this because there are glitches that can be used which will bring Arthur to New Austin, and if you visit a point of interest, Arthur will draw the location, but he'll do it in a different style to John. A classic Western trope is that the good guy, usually a sheriff or other gunslingers assigned with the law, wears a white hat. The bad guy, usually an outlaw or other anti-hero, wears a black one. Micah is the only gang member seen wearing a white hat and later is revealed to be the Pinkerton Agency's inside man, though the rest of his actions do not reflect the traditional archetype. In the mission Pouring Forth of Oil 4, the cutscene of the train stopping directly imitates and pays homage to the train robbery scene in the Western The Assassination of Jesse James. Returning characters from Red Dead Redemption include the protagonist of the first game, John Marston, his wife Abigail but the last name of Roberts, John's son Jack Marston, Uncle, Dutch van der Linde, Bill Williamson, Javier Escuela, and Edgar Ross. However, only 4 actors from Red Dead Redemption return, this being Rob Wheatoff, who plays John Marston, Benjamin Byron Davis, who plays Dutch van der Linde, Steve J. Palmer, who plays Bill Williamson, and Jim Bentley, who plays Edgar Ross. The rest of the returning characters are replaced by a new cast of voice actors. Of course, we know that Red Dead Redemption 2 has a day and night cycle, but it also follows the lunar cycle as well. Your camp runs on a schedule. In the morning, your gang members might walk out of their tent in their long johns. People will sleep at night, and when there's a food call, people will gather around. Angelo Bronte's right-hand man, called Guido Martelli, doesn't say anything in Red Dead Redemption 2 story, but is credited with a voice actor within the credits. It also says Guido Martinelli instead of Guido Martelli. He's also recently been introduced to Red Dead Online, and finally he does actually say something. If you get in a fight or a shootout where a bounty is placed on your head, once you leave that area, lawmen will clean up your mess. If you escape to a certain distance and use your binoculars to observe where you left a couple of casualties after a shootout, you will see some lawmen approaching the area. These lawmen will then pick up the remains and cart them back to town on their horses. If you leave bodies of animals where you killed them, they will attract scavengers as the carcasses will decompose over time. In the previous video where we went through 10 minutes of useless information about Red Dead Redemption 2, we talked about how in-depth NPCs are, as they all have their own daily routines, but we really only just brushed on the surface, as NPCs all have their own individual face animations. As you skin an animal within story, you'll be able to see exactly where the exits and entrance wounds are. Arthur's jacket will be left bloodied if he carries a skinned animal on his shoulders, and your horse rear will be smeared with blood too after delivering your kills to the butcher. Your jacket will also have finer details such as claw tears if an animal is able to grapple you. Many of you may have noticed that your footsteps will sound different depending on what you're actually stepping on. This is normal for a lot of games as it does add to the immersion, making the player feel like there is some realism to the game and some realism within the audio for what you're actually doing. But you may not have noticed that your footsteps will sound different depending on what you're wearing. Walking on wooden floorboards with one type of boot will sound completely different compared to if you was using another. Newspapers will cover events that occur throughout the story. Sometimes it will even mention certain events that the gang have performed in. But the biggest thing is that you will be able to find other smaller stories around the world. This really adds to the depth. Mud, snow, and dirt indents will shape dynamically around you and everyone else's footsteps, or around bodies should you fall over. This means that horses with larger legs and hooves will leave a wider trail in the snow than skinnier legged horses. Everyone knows with your horses that if they do get dirty because of the mud and dirt, that you do need to clean them off. And there is a noticeable difference with your horse and how it looks compared to if it's clean versus if it's dirty. But this isn't just a dirty texture that is overlaid over the whole horse. For example, if your horse gets dirty and you remove its saddle, you will see the exact lines where the saddle once was. It becomes a dynamic texture very much in a way that mud, snow, and dirt itself is dynamic and shapes around your body, which we mentioned earlier. Very similar to this with your horse, Arthur will have the exact same thing, and it can get as fine as there being dirt under his fingernails. Arthur and John will both struggle to mount their horses if it's higher than them. You'll experience situations like this when your horse is on a hill, and both Arthur and John will go through separate animations just so they have momentum to be able to jump on top. For everyone that has played through the game, everyone knows that honor is important. Honor will change certain aspects of the game, such as the ending. You either can get a good ending or a bad ending. But it is also impacted in smaller details which not everyone knows about, and a good example of this is the kill cams. If you play honorably, the camera on the kill replay will focus on Arthur, and it doesn't matter who you're killing in the situation. If you're dishonorable, it will focus the kill and represent it in a glorious way, focusing on the victim of who's just been shot. And not just that, but the less honor you have, the less visible Arthur will be within the background of the camera view. So it can also affect the camera angle and who can be seen in the background. The most obvious honorable versus dishonorable choices won't always be apparent. For example, killing an O'Driscoll, one of your rival gang members, won't be considered dishonorable unless you escalate the conversation before killing them, in which it will become dishonorable. In the story, both Arthur and John have to physically move dead bodies in order to loot them. They'll flip them over the right way so they can pat them down and loot their pockets. Now, this wasn't a big deal at the beginning of the game, but it makes a difference now since Red Dead Online is completely different. Red Dead Online started like this, but players wanted to have a much faster paced gameplay. So whereas Red Dead Redemption 2 story focuses on immersion and making sure everything feels realistic, with Red Dead Online it doesn't tend to the exact same audience. It's more about having gameplay at a faster pace. This is also the reason why movement is completely different within online compared to story. Whilst we're on the subject of immersion, it's not just about your character movement which has to feel realistic. They've also made the cursor feel more realistic within the map. If you move your cursor within the world map, it invokes a wind sound to indicate your movement speed. We all know with Red Dead Redemption 2, there was a lot of cut content. There were talks about there being a second love interest. There was also talks, which we mentioned within this video, of Arthur being able to travel to New Austin with there being missions within that location. This isn't a new thing for games. Content gets cut all the time, and it's there to save time for actual development, as well as sometimes it just leads to a better story where you get straight to the point without dragging it out. This is simply something that happens during the polishing stage. But with just the story of Red Dead Redemption 2, it is said that up to around 5 hours of gameplay was cut. This isn't including any other types of side activities, this is just from the main missions. Now, I understand lots of people would love to play those missions, but it was a decision that was made for the best of the game. And finally, for all of its realism and accuracy to the time period in which Red Dead Redemption 2 takes place, Rockstar Games also likes to have a bit of fun with players. If you know where to look with side activities, you'll be able to find supernatural entities such as vampires, ghosts, and even UFOs. But anyway guys, here is another lot of useless facts about Red Dead Redemption 2. If you know any useless facts about the game, then please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. But anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. But for now, I'm going to see ya.